All right, looks like we're all good. Welcome everybody to today's live lighting session here on Facebook from the Academy of Animated Art. My name is Mike Tanzillo. So today I'll be taking you all through some of the student submissions from the last 24 hours. As you all know, I do video critiques every Monday through Friday, and I just take a look at what was posted within the last 24 hours, and I give feedback and allow students to make some progress. So today, you're going to take a look at not only what we've been seeing from the current lighting challenge, which is the spooky haunted house designed by Justin Gladys and modeled, and the asset was created by Sarah Tarr. But we're also going to be looking at some other student submissions, some other assets, other personal projects that students are working on, so you guys can get a full idea of what we're doing. So, okay. So Adrian asks about the process of lighting a shot. So friend asked him to animate this shot. Every time I start a piece, I seem to lack the creativity to start lighting anything. So I find some reference for a while, but I get stuck and not quite sure where to start. Totally normal. You're not lacking creativity, you're lacking confidence. And that is a big difference. So let's take a look at the shot.
Say hello to Dr. Watts.
So these are actually two shots. Okay, so we've got this shot coming in the beginning. It's a character-driven shot. So what we know is that we need to focus in on the characters. And there's two very different things that happen. So we've got this character standing here. He's talking about something casual, and then all of a sudden he kind of loses it, and he talks about tasing somebody. And he's tasing. Okay, so I think that we have two pretty clear-cut light sources in the scene. Three, actually. You've got light coming in through this window. It's daytime, we're in school, these kids are in school, it's daytime. We have the overhead lights, and then we have the taser. So if it's me, what I'm thinking is, I'm starting with the light sources. I'm like, how can I use those to tell my story? And again, just focus on the three things that we always talk about: telling the story, visual shaping, directing the viewer's eye. So to direct the viewer's eye, we can push some light coming in this window, draw it around these characters. Same thing, light coming down here, draw it around the characters. Make that kind of a warm, happy orange light because it's a normal daytime scene, just normal old life. Everything's good, everything's great. And then from there, we get into a situation where he illuminates this taser. And then all of a sudden things go nutty. So the taser needs to feel different than everything else that we're looking at. So now all of a sudden, I don't know what a taser color is in real life. You can look it up. But to me, this is going to be like some purple or green shocky things that'll be like all around him. And then as he runs down the hall, it's all about like these lighting up and hitting his face and like running down the hall. And it's like, there's these second lights because there's two things you need to communicate with this shot. One, taser. Two, motion. So passing lights overhead, taser in the front. So I described how I would approach this, but what we're doing is we're thinking about, again, the three whys of lighting. What's the story that we're trying to tell? Happy scenes turns chaotic, right? Talking about figuring out how to direct the viewer's eye. How do we get our focus on here? Maybe there's some light coming in, rimming these guys up, allowing this to go dark behind them. So it's really just, we need to figure out, are we gonna go light over dark? Are we gonna go warm over cool? We got to do something, right, to get the focus on them. And then number three is the visual shaping. So we know we can do that during the construction, and that will come with confidence because you're overwhelmed right now because you're just like blown away by the possibilities. And it's all about simplifying that process. What are the key elements? What are the main things that you're looking for? Story of characters in a school, normal day, crazy thing happens. Make that juxtaposition, make that difference occur. And I think that will, that's your big momentum shift. So with that, I hope you found that helpful. I think that's a very important question. And we will, and we'll do that. And now I'm going to jump into the other images. Let's start right here. Let's start with Nigel. So let's take a look at Nigel's original and to where we have come. So again, this is the haunted house asset from our asset library. It's this month's lighting challenge. Just put my microphone over there. All right, so this is where we are now. So we really worked on focusing on the character, getting, telling our story through the lighting. Nigel worked really hard to get some of the darker elements in there because he had a really nice fog that was going over top, but we were noticing that it wasn't creating the dark values to create like a richness in the image that we were looking for. And I think that is it's going really well. There are things like, all these small shapes here in the foreground were really distracting, and the character being in the darkness there. So lightening that up, minimizing all of these elements and getting those there. So now let's talk about next steps. So a few things. Well, number one, the moon should not be over top of a cloud. That should be back behind the cloud. Also, the moon doesn't match the sky's style. Like the way that these clouds are a little bit more whimsical and stylized. I would do that with the moon a little bit and draw it to be like a little bit less of a perfect circle and more give it a little bit more whimsy just to match the rest of this environment. And then also, again, just make sure it's off in the distance is the furthest back thing. We don't need these dark spots on it. I know we can see that with our eye and when there are like telescopic photographs of the moon, but in the evening, it can just generally be brighter values overall. In terms of the car headlight, good job with the flares. I think the streaks are a little too like tight, like you can just see the lines a little bit too much, and it's a little bit too big and a little bit too stamped on top. Let's tone that down. Let's soften the flare a little bit, and then we can go from there. Additionally, I think we can get some more variation in the sky as we get towards this side of the house. So everything back behind this tree, I think we can starting here over, we can start to gradiate that down and make that a little bit darker. Watch your refraction index, your reflection rays as they go through these glass surfaces here, because it looks like you're seeing some dark shapes, because basically you're asking the ray to bounce a whole bunch of times because there's two glass surfaces there. So it's like coming in, bouncing, going through, out into another. So it's like bouncing through a bunch of surfaces, and it may not be making it all the way through there. So you may need to up your ray depth on those. Same thing here. Like it may just be reflecting something dark, but it's odd to me that those are so dark while everything else isn't quite there. So I'm thinking it's a ray depth issue. So just check in on that. Again, love what you've got here on the ground. Think that's all beautiful. I think the character is looking really good. I love that you were somehow able to get a couple of hints of the orange light in the hair. Very cool. And then you said you were going to play around with some different camera angles, and I think that's a great strategy to go from here. So really, really great job. Pearl, so just so you know, this was our very, very first assignment, our first challenge, which is you find a reference image, you use some simple geo, some primitive geo, and you try and reference the lighting. I think Pearl's done a brilliant job with this. So this is the newer version matching, like, again, look at this specular highlight. It's there. Look at this little bit of rim light here. It's there. Look at the way that the bridge fades down. Boom, it's there. The pink light coming in and hitting on this side. It's there. It might be a little bit on top of his head, a little bit. It's kind of there. I guess it's more that kind of cuts off. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you did better. You did better. And then the last thing that we were working on from the last iteration was just creating some more coolness in the shadow, and I think you've reached that point. So the purpose of this assignment is to really get an understanding of the tools of working with reference and seeing the world a little bit differently, and I think you've definitely accomplished that. So I would say that you are ready to move on to the next iteration. So really great job on this, Pearl. All right, Annabelle. Again, first assignment, we take our simple ball man character. This is like the maximum Jasmine and I's modeling skills to create this guy, and you're matching to a scene from Joker, which you've got, again, some cool green light coming in one side. We got some warm light kind of coming in the other. You're matching it up really well. I think that on the one thing about these is you have to be careful to not allow each side to have equal weight, because then it just kind of creates a value balance between them, which sometimes works. But in this particular case, like if you look this side, the intensity of this is much higher than this. And on yours here, this gets almost as bright as that. So I would just take this down and then just maybe even wrap it around just a little bit more. but just take the overall intensity down and allow that to be a secondary light where this is our primary source. I love the gradation you're getting on the background here. Really beautiful stuff. It's also interesting that it looks like we've got some bounce light coming in from this onto the ground, which is nice. But I think, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much about it. You're really nailing the look. You're nailing the color. Maybe a little bit more like blue in this green. It's getting a little bit warmer. So maybe just shifting that green value, like just like a touch more towards blue to kind of get into this realm. And that'll kind of help line it up just a little bit more color-wise. Ashley, so this is a You've Got Mail reference. Yeah, so you're coming along really well. I think we can still push. I think the key light is in a good spot now. I think we can still continue to push some bounce light up underneath them just a little bit more. And like there's some areas like the inside of her mouth that are super jet black, and under there, and then up in here, like again, with light coming down, it's very bright. Just maybe putting an area light underneath them here, bouncing up like off camera, just to kind of get in some, because like we want to create like an overall kind of glowy, happy feeling overall. Like we want this to shift and like get up into this region here with our values to kind of soften it all up. And then, you know, maybe even, I'm just looking at the inside now. Don't pay attention to what happens outside the window. Oh, it's too much. But like warming that up just a little bit, making it a little bit cozier. And then another thing that would really, really help this scene is, let's do this real quick. Again, this is a pretty ghetto way of doing this, but it'll give you a rough idea. But really what I'm trying to do here is I'm just going to create a vignette around the characters. There we go. And then we want to filter, blur Gaussian, blur the heck out of it. Just something like this. And then, yeah, like just something like that, because that'll really help us narrow in on the central part of the characters. I would give that a little bit of color and maybe not do it as quite as obtusely as I did, but I think that you can get that going pretty well. Because again, we really want to center in on it's almost like the important part of this image is, yes, it's the characters, but it's almost about the space between them, because the space between the characters designates the intimacy of the conversation. Like he's leaning in, she's not quite leaning in as much. There's a lot of like subtle body language things here that are going on that you would want to play up from there. Let's see, and then ultimately, we want to add a little, like, again, this is a little bit more brightness, airiness to the scene. I'm just taking a blurred version of the original and screening it over top of itself. Maybe something a little bit more along these lines. So like going from the original to what we have here, it's like softer, warmer, more bounce, more glow, more haze, vignetting, really narrowing in on our characters there. and then there'll be some eye cleanup stuff we do, but I really want to nail this warm, glowy look to them, because I think that's very important. Let me just check Facebook here real quick. Let me see if there's any comments. We got some viewers. Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing? But we will continue on. Okay, cool. All right. So we did Annabelle, Ashley. All right, Dani. We got a bunch of submissions here from Dani. Okay. Make sure we have everything. Okay, so still have an issue with, the glowiness is starting to get there. But one of the other things I wanted to point out is in a scene like this, and I just grabbed this as reference, pretty super low res, but like these are the light sources coming in here on the side, like just like that and that and that, right? look how much bounce light is going around the room. So much light is ricocheting around this type of environment. And I really think that you can play off of that a little bit too. Like really play off that. That's just, again, like this is the bounce light, very similar to what we were experiencing in Ashley's shot too. Just like an underswell of glowiness of secondary light kind of overtaking the room. Because what's happening right now, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but notice that these pillars are super bright and the area next to it is super dark. And what's happening is they're not living in the same lighting environment. Like, so what we want is like what I almost want to see you do. Let's do this for this next iteration. Let's save out a separate version of this file and just put a standard surface shader on it. If you're using Arnold or whichever renderer you're using, just like a standard shader on it. And then I want to play around with that lighting minus shaders because I want to show you, don't worry about comp or anything like anything fancy like that. Just your light rig. And I want to see what's happening. Cause like I want the light to come in here. I want it to strike a shadow across here. I want to create some darkness from here on out. I want to use that light to bounce up into these regions and really kind of fill it in. I want to feel the direction of that light coming in and hitting the ground. And what's happening up here is like, I don't get a sense of any shadowing of, it's like light is hitting the columns uniformly the same, regardless of which wall it's on, how high up it is. And it's hitting, and then the light is universally not hitting the brick, regardless of where it is. On the ground, you're seeing some variation because of the light, but like there are some issues that we're seeing as a result of that. And I think it's a shader related issue. So I want to take the shaders out of it and just look at the lights. Because right now because it may be a light thing, but I'm 90% sure it's a shader thing. Because like the amount of light that it takes to illuminate these pillars is much different than the light that it takes to illuminate this. So because to get this brick to that level, you'd really have to hammer with light. And I get that they're different color, like white pillars versus dark, like totally fine, but we need to like bring them into the same world a little bit. So I think that should be the next step with this one. This, I think this is looking nice. Again, we'll just add some more haziness, glowiness, diffusion stuff. The one thing about this now, you're adding some satellite dishes to the top and some water towers and stuff. That's really cool. Looking at your original reference, we would now need to add, and this is a shame of once we start building, like the buildings are too similar as each other. It's almost like we need to start, like there's no window treatments on any of the windows. They're all, they're all kind of exactly the same. And they're all perfectly uniform, which like, again, there would be like some awnings, and I guess we're not seeing the bottom of them, but just take a look at, there'd be like, it's odd that there are windows here facing into the side of this building, and same thing here. Like you would see these windows and maybe those, and then there would be like an advertisement painted here or something like that. So to really push this to the next level, it's really getting that detail in there, because I really think this is starting to come together from a lighting standpoint. We just want to start feeling that detail a little bit more. So I think that would be a good next step for this one. All right, for this guy. Yeah, like you're darkening in the middle here. That's working out really well. I totally hear you about softening the shadows. I agree, because like looking at this shadow in particular, like that's very sharp, which isn't completely abnormal for stage lighting. Like I guess that happens. The one thing I would caution you about is making softness adjustments in Nuke, because it can create some, like it ends up just blurring it and not actually softening it the way that we would necessarily like. So just be on the lookout for that. In terms of like stage lighting, I want it again to feel more dramatic. Like I feel like I'm seeing too much of the house. Like if this light's coming down and just hitting the character in here, actually, let's do that. If it's like just coming down in here, I'm just following these lines down. Let's like wind that out a little bit. Let's say it's happening in here. Like there would be softness out to like here, right? Just from like light bouncing around. And then everything outside of this would kind of go dark. So, and same thing here. So it's like, you know, light coming down there, light coming down there, softness. And then all like this stuff in the middle, because stage lighting is very, like there's no ambient light in the set, right? So like all this stuff, all of this in here would go dark. There is that little bit of a light, I guess. And then from here, the other thing you really want to like pick up some reflections in this and make that feel like glass. I will challenge you in the next iteration to add that darkness in here and take another pass at adding more shaping on the characters, because when you're making it all about this one main light, you're putting a lot of pressure on that light to really create strong shaping. And right now it's a little bit frontal on this guy. And also if you like, you push this, like that's a tough drawing. It looks like I'm just saying go down, go back into space with it. Oh, I can't do perspective drawings. Let's see, like if you go back that way into space with it, what you can do is you can create a lighting setup that actually comes across the side here. I'm trying to think how that would work. If it comes in enough from the side, it'll hit the character from the side and create shaping this way. And then the light behind the character will spill off this way. And actually, you might have to close off this porch, but you might be able to create a shadow back behind the character so that the character's light over dark. So I would just push you to get a little bit more out of that. This one, this glow back there is looking better. I think that like the God rays around him are fun. The biggest thing to work on with this is the core darkness on him is like super black. And one of the things that we were seeing in the reference was that the light does spill around and kind of lift that value. So bring that warmth value around him and into his core a little bit, so it's not like super jet black. Because again, this contrast is going to just pull all the attention back there. And then we can go from there. Because I think let's get that right first, then we'll come back here and get this. One thing about this table, if you're doing another render, just realizing that the green on the table is a little bit saturated. Just pull back on that saturation in the material value. I think will help that out a lot. Hannah, cool stuff. So love the color palette reference. We got the environment reference, and we've got God rays. Really beautiful God rays, like a pocket of, a patch of warmth up over there. The light rays coming in from the side. That's one thing that we're really missing, is a sense of the sky back there. Like seeing this darkness back here and this darkness back here, it just feels like the world cuts off to black. We need a background back there. We need the world to continue to expand. We need a sky. We need something that's motivating this lightness to come through. As somebody who's worked on several Ice Age films with lots of snow, snow is extraordinarily difficult. It's so, because right now and it's extraordinarily difficult in the shadows. You've got a really nice color in here. You see how there's like a little bit of blue and it never really gets gray or dirty? Back over here, we're not having the same thing. It's falling into grayness and it almost looks dirty. So in a happy scene like this, in a hopeful scene like this, you want to make sure that you're giving your snow, and you can see it here in your reference. Like look at this color, like pretty cool blues to help lift it. You can see it in here. You can see it in here. The snow itself never gets gray. It never loses that saturation. So finding that saturation in the shadow of the snow is going to be very important. In terms of the character lighting, I think we can sneak the key light around a little bit more on her face, wrap it around a little bit more here. There is some work that we can do on our eyes, but I really want to focus in on getting, and it's either about getting the light more on her face or more as a rim light, because right now it's kind of dancing the line in between. But I think it's more about getting some shape on her face. And then we've got this fill value, maybe a little bit of a kicky rim on this side could help. And then, yeah, because bringing the key light around will allow you to create some more shaping on these trees too. And then watch out for the needles on the trees. They're very, very dark. They don't seem to be influenced by the sun at all. So just make sure that they're picking up some sunny goodness too. Let's see if that's in the ref. Like you can see some values in some of this stuff. You know, like they're just getting little bits of the light on the furry parts of that as well. So, but I think this is off to a good start. I think if you hit those notes, we'll be coming along really nicely. Jordan, I love this paint over. It's a little low res. It's tough to see, but I love the colors you're getting. The variation that you're getting in there is really great. Watch out for these darks in here. Just make sure they're retaining some of the cool color. You don't want them to go super jet black. Make sure you're getting a little bit underneath this awning too. But I like where you're going with this. I like the idea of doing this kind of glowy thing. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. The moon is a little bit overpowerful right now. So I would either slide it over or just minimize the size a little bit. But I think that's a good thing on the next step. Mauro. So I just wanted to bring this in. I think this looks great. Again, let's take a look at the original where we started. It's so important because you know you can make iterative changes over time, but you kind of lose track of where you started and where you've gotten. And I don't want to lose sight of that. You've got this, like, we went from an early stage where you're just kind of playing around with it and trying to define your voice and your color scheme and your story to like, there's a much stronger story here. It's like a drunk octopus playing poker. And like he may have just killed this guy. I don't know. Something bad happened, but there's a lot more shaping, a lot more visual interest. I think you did a really great job. So I just kind of wanted to end with that there. So with that, I think we've got everybody. Yeah. Got Nigel, Mauro, cool. If I missed anyone, please let me know. I'm going to hop over into Facebook to just check 2 more final things. Let me stop sharing my screen here. All right. Man, it's gotten dark outside. Kind of an overcast day here in Manhattan. Check that. All right. Cool. Hello, everybody that's logged in remotely. It's great to see you all here. All right. Thank you all very much for joining in today. If you guys have any other questions, like I said, make sure you add them in the comments into either Facebook or YouTube or however you're watching this. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. All right. Have a great weekend, everyone. Happy letting.